Hello and welcome. It's Pauline back again with the ExQISSite Quilt. It's very exciting because in this episode we are going to start joining our blocks together with our between the block quilt-as-you-go technique. So I hope you've got all of your blocks quilted except for two. There's two blocks that we haven't yet quilted, but that'll be in the next episode, because we've left them till the end just in case your measurements work out differently to mine. So we've always left those two unquilted in case your sizes need to change. But after this episode and you start joining your blocks together, you'll really get an idea of whether your measurements are running along with mine or whether they're going to be a little bit different and you need to make adjustments. But in the episode 14, we gave you a cutting chart. This was for cutting your backing fabric, which were in different strips, different size strips, and we call these the spacer strips, and these are cut from your backing fabric. So we're going to need those to start joining our blocks together. There is one block we haven't yet trimmed, so we need to trim that today, and it was block A2, which I've used it as. It's where we've done the tulip applique. You know, and you may have chosen not to do this. So it's the block where we quilted the 1-inch grid, just straight lines on the diagonal. Then we've used the set F templates. We've traced around it for our applique shapes, and we've made some bias, cut some leaves, and then we appliqued it down. So this block needs to be trimmed now. So you can refer back to your trimming chart, but it is going to be 10.5 by 4.5. So I'm just quickly going to trim up this one. I'm going to use the bigger square ruler because I want to be able to see exactly where I am. So I'm going to take a little bit off both sides. So we'll cut down one side, and then we need 10.5 inches. So I'm going to be able to cut a little bit off both ends. So I'll just trim up this bottom edge to make it a bit tidy. And depending on what quilting you've done is to how much your block has pulled in and your tensions on your machine. And when you've appliqued, I've blanket stitched around the tulip, and I've raw edge stitched and done some blanket stitching around the leaves. But it depends how you've stitched this down to how much your block may have shrunk in. So work with your own measurements. 4.5 by 10.5. Get my ruler around the right way. 4.5 by 10.5, and take a little bit off this side and a little bit off the top. So there's my block now squared up. So the only two blocks that we'll have left to square up are those last two that we haven't quilted, but we'll get to that later on in the next episode. So there's the block already trimmed. So now what we're going to do is join Unit A, Block A1, Block A2, Block A3 and Block A4 together with the spacer strips that you cut for Unit A. So we're going to need a 2.5 by 10.5 inch spacer strip. We're going to need a 2.5 by 9.5 inch spacer strip, and they're the only two we're going to use. You will have one piece left for Unit A, which will be 3.5 by 15.5, but we're not going to use that in this episode. That's going to happen in the next episode. So I'm going to just put my blocks up on the design wall. You may have quilted different designs to what I have quilted. That is perfectly okay. And I encourage you to mix your blocks around. So if you have another 10.5 by 11-inch block that you've trimmed back and you want to use that as A1 position, there is nothing wrong with that. I encourage you to do it because it's your work, it's your quilt. You've got to be happy with it. You don't have to follow me exactly. And it is going to be the same when we put our sashings on. you don't have to follow me exactly, and I'm going to play with sashings in this episode to show you how to try and balance your different sashings, because you may be using totally different coloured fabrics to what I've used, and when you've made your combination of sashings up, where I put mine, yours may not look right. So long as you work with the measurements, the 2.5-inch sashings, you've got a lot of those. They can go anywhere on the quilt, except for a couple of places where we've got a 4-inch sashing and a 3-inch sashing. You can't put a 2-inch there. But we'll explain more as we go on. So let's put these blocks up on my design wall. So we're going to put A1 up. Now I hope they're going to stay there. We'll put A2 up. Then we'll put A3. Then notice I'm leaving a bit of a gap. That's for adding our spacer strips. Now with our spacer strips calculated 2.5 inches, that's what's going to go between these blocks. Okay, so we're putting the 10.5-inch one here and the 9.5 inch here. So just grab those. So this one's going to go here. So you're going to have the wrong side facing up to you, the right side facing out, because you want that to be the same as your back of your quilt. So that's going to go there. Then this one is going to go in here. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these on simply by picking this up. We're going to pin this. Make sure you pin it. I'll take this one with me. We're going to pin these, and I suggest you use the flat flower head pins. Pin the end. Now this is where your block size may differ. If when you've trimmed your blocks, they've come out a little bit smaller than the measurements I suggest, you will need to trim the length of your spacer strip to fit your block exactly. So if yours measures 9 3/4 in length, this will need to be 9 3/4, and the other adjoining block will need to be the same measurement. Your width won't change, it's just the measurement of your length. So pin this one in place. Now we're going to go to the machine, and I'm using on my machine a nice light grey rasant thread. Now I like to sew with a rasant thread. It's mainly cotton. It's got a little polyester core down through the middle wrapped with cotton. So I'm just going to use that in the bobbin and the top of my machine, but you use whatever threads you want to match your fabrics. And we're going to sew a 1/4-inch seam. Now, as I've explained in some of my other episodes, I don't use a 1/4-inch foot. That's my choice. I use the open toe foot and I move my needle position over to be the same 1/4-inch as what's on my ruler, because this is all my rulers measure the same. This is the 1/4-inch that I work with, and it is a little bit different to the 1/4-inch foot of my machine. So that's why I'm going to move the needle over. So we'll go to the sewing machine. We'll move the needle over, or you put your 1/4-inch foot on. I'm just going to put my pressure foot down, align the edge of the ruler with the edge of the foot. You can use something sharp and run up that edge so that you know that they're lining up exactly. Oops, just move that a bit. I now feel that they're as one, they're lining up exactly, and I'm just going to move my needle position over, and on my Bernina 570 QE, my needle position is to the right. I've moved my needle to the right, and I have it set up on number 4. Oops, just let's line that up. needle position number 4 on this machine with this foot, but yours will be totally different, whatever machine you're going to use. So it's very simple sewing from here on in. We're just going to join that strip in. I don't like to sew over the pins. I do a reverse at the beginning and the end so that my spacer strip's not going to pop undone. Don't sew over the pin, just take it out. Now, if you find as you're sewing down here, your fabric starts to move, let's say the block is going to stretch, and it shouldn't with using that Hobbs fusible batting, but for some reason, if it starts to stretch, one of the pieces of fabric stretch against the other, it means there is too much foot pressure. So you may want to take a little bit of pressure off the foot like we did for quilting, but you won't need to take as much off. I have my pressure set on normal and my fabric is not moving. It's sitting there beautifully. But I do want the ends to be exactly level. Sew down. Get to the end. I'm just going to take the pin out. Make sure the ends stay level. Stitch and back stitch. Then we're just simply going to sew the next block onto the other side. So we have that one done. Pick this one up, pin it. They should be exactly the same length. If they're not, double check everything. I do like to sew with my spacer strip on top because I can see that it's lining up exactly. And if anything's going to stretch, it's going to be the spacer strip, more so than what your quilted block will stretch. So I'll pin that and we'll sew that one on. Then we're going to do exactly the same, joining A3 and A4 together. Then we'll move on to adding, looking at the different sashings that we could put in over these spacer strips. Oops, do a reverse. We've got both sets now joined into a row. So we've got row A and row B. We're going to press the seams into the spacer strip. Just gently press them. And of course we can take our tags off now. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to play with different sashings and decide which ones I want to put where in between these two blocks. You may want to lay out all of your blocks before you decide. You might want to put them on a design wall. You might like to lay them on a bed, on a floor, wherever you can lay out the whole quilt with all the blocks. And if you have all your sashings made, you may want to play with where they're going to be positioned in your quilt. But remember, you can change your quilting blocks around so long as the sizes fit together into a unit. Like, I couldn't join another 10 by 10 block here and expect them to join together with these two. That won't work. You've got to keep your sizes together. But you can switch them around. I could have put this one on this side and switched this one to this side. That works perfectly fine. So now I'm going to put these back up on the design wall so that you can see some different sashings that would go between these blocks. And it really is balancing your colours out. That's why I suggest you lay out the whole quilt. We will show you our quilt laid out with all of the different sashings where I've decided to put them. My choice. Your choice could be totally different. So long as you're going to put a 2-inch finish sashing over these two strips, they can be any combination that you like. Balance your colours, because it really is about balancing the colours so you get the lights and darks distributed throughout the quilt. So let's put these back up and we will then see what's going to look best with mine. So I think I might pin them there so that they don't fall down on me. Oops. So I'll put that one there. So that's row A. Now we'll put row B up. So you can see they've come out the right size to each other, and they should. If they didn't, you will need to trim them to fit. So any of my 2-inch sashings, as I've said before, can go here. You've made them up to different lengths, but you could either trim them or add to them. So if I put that one there, I'm not liking that because it's too close to this one. Okay, so I would decide not to put that there. I've got my checkerboards. I could put that one there and shorten them to fit. So I could unpick at this point here and use that one. I could use my crazy patch one here. Once again, it's too long, so I could shorten it by just cutting it off here. I could use my 4-up, my layering one, and put that there, and that's quite nice. I could use my small square one and pop that there and just shorten it a bit by just cutting it off at the length. So it really is your decision to what you want to put where in your quilt. I have decided for this one, I'm going to put my 3-up sashing between these two blocks, and I'm going to put my small flying geese. This one's going to go here. And it is a little bit long, so once I stitch it on, I will trim. And I'm going to put my small flying geese here. They are a little bit long, but when I trim it, it will fit perfectly, because in the balance of mine, as you see the whole layout of my quilt a bit later, you'll notice that I've tried to balance my colours to suit exactly what I'm doing. So what we're going to do now is go back to my work table. We're going to run a line of glue right down on this stitching line on both sides. We're then going to glue this over the top and press it. Then we're going to go to the machine with the mono poly thread on the top and the bobbin, and we're going to move the needle position over and stitch down both sides. And that's how we apply all of our sashings to the quilt. So let's go back to the work table and apply our sashings and stitch them down. And that's exactly what you're going to do for every one of the rows in your quilt. But we're not joining the rows together until the next episode, because there's some other things that we have to do before we join the rows together. So we'll use our glue. Just grab my glue. Now, do use the Roxanne glue based it, because this is the glue that I know works perfectly. It's not going to move. It's going to wash out of your quilt, give you a perfect result. So we're going to run the glue down each side, just little dots, right down on that stitching line. Do the other side. Now, pinning it doesn't work, because I find that pinning allows for too much distortion. So gluing it ensures that it's going to sit in place perfectly for you. So this folded edge of your sashing is going to go right on that stitching line. I can kind of see the stitching line a little bit when I look at it closely, and that's perfect because when I iron it, the fabric and the glue will just space it out just a little bit more. So just come along, and remember the glue won't stick to your iron, so there's no problems there. Make sure you've got your batting inside your sashing. That's important that you've already got that in, and we covered that in the episodes where we were making the sashing. If it runs offline a bit, just pick it up and reposition. So you would be normally doing this at your ironing board, but I have my ironing mat on the table. Turn it around so you can see this side. Pull it out. Make sure you pull it out because you don't want this spacer strip to bunch back in. So as you're ironing it, just give it a little bit of a pull so that you're getting that exactly lined up with the stitching line. Just press it nicely. You want to set that glue so that it doesn't move as you stitch this. Just use the side of the iron against that edge. That holds it in place perfectly for you. Do the same with this one. We're going to iron that on and we'll fit it, make it fit. Then we'll go and stitch down each side. And this is where the monopoly thread is so important because we've got multicolours here. We don't want to use a blue thread because it would show up too much on the white. We don't want to use a white thread because it would show up on the blue. So I'll glue this one down and we'll start sewing at the sewing machine. We've got both sides of this one glued down. We've got the flying geese glued down. Now when I've glued these down, I've had to unpick at this point because I had made this longer I thought it'd go in a different position on the quilt, but I've changed my mind. So I've unpicked this seam. So now it fits exactly because we've worked all the measurements of the blocks to work with the different sizes of our sashing lengths. So don't be afraid to unpick this. You might want to keep this for something else and add other bits to it. So I've unpicked it, I've cut the bit of batting out. Now we're ready to go to the machine. I've got the machine threaded up with the monopoly thread in my bobbin and the monopoly thread on the top of my machine. And all we're going to do is move our needle position over. I'm just going to take the foot off so you can have a look here at what we're going to do at the machine, because all our machines are different the way we can approach them. But I'm going to put the inside edge of the open toe foot right up against the sashing edge, right up against it. I'm going to move my needle position over so my needle sits right on the edge, on the inside edge of the sashing. Now as I sew, I watch the needle, okay? Just keep an eye on the needle and keep an eye on the edge of that foot. If the foot starts to sway off a little bit from that edge, you'll have a crooked line. So keep it right up against it as you sew. You may want to take some pressure off the pressure foot, or you may want to add some pressure. So as you start to sew, if you see this starting to push along and buckle, that means there's too much downward pressure. Okay, so just remember that. So we'll start sewing. I use the stitch length about 2.5. That is what I like to use on my machine, but you decide what you would like. So we'll put the pressure foot down. I'm going to move my needle over so that the needle's sitting right on the edge of that sashing. So as we sew, we've got 2.5. My needle position is in the number 5 position to the right. Take your time with this. and just keep your eye on the needle and that edge of that foot is pushing right in tight against that sashing. Go to sew down each side. And that is how you're going to apply all of your sashings to your rows. But remember, we're not going to join the rows together to make the units, like Unit A and Unit B. We're going to do that in the next episode because we really need to be doing something else to make a feature of the quilt. So we're going to cover all of that in the next episode. But I'm just now going to pick up the flying geese. I'm not going to cut that. I'll pick up these blocks and we'll just keep sewing down the edge. And that's how simple it is. Now we've got a little bit of a bulky seam here where we've joined all these flying geese together and I can see it's starting to push away a little bit. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to take a little bit more pressure off. I'm taking my pressure from 70 down to about 50. And I'll see if that's going to, there we go, we've got no more movement. It's just sitting there beautifully now. When we get down to the bottom, we'll just turn around and go back up the other side. Very, very simple process. So get all of your sashings done, added to your, over the top of your spacer strip. Remember, lay your quilt out so that you can get a feel of how you want your colours to flow and where you want your different sashings to be applied. But let's just keep sewing. We'll get this done down both sides and we'll let you have a look at it. So that's it for this episode. We'll see you in the next episode where we're going to be adding some features to the quilt and then we'll join the units together. Then all we've got left to do is make the sasha strips for around the outside and to quilt our borders. So it's very well nearly finished. So get ready till next episode. Bye for now.